HVAC 360, episode number 62. HVAC Careers, Manufacturers Representatives. Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. This week, we're going to be diving into the careers in HVAC. This is a topic that was requested by one of the student listeners of the show. This time, we're going to focus on being a manufacturer's representative. And I have lined up for us to talk with Rob Laneve, who is the Director of Engineering over at Air Control Products. He is somebody that I know from H3 and a really good guy. And very knowledgeable about this field. So we're going to get him on, but first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Building Commissioning Association. If you're involved in the building commissioning at all, this is obviously the one organization that you want to belong to. It's a great networking and learning opportunity for a number of the things they put on. Specifically, the National Conference on Building Commissioning, the NCBC, is actually going to happen in a couple of months here, coming up real quick, May 6th through the 8th. This is the 2013, so if you're kind of listening to it after the fact, you might want to check your local schedules to see when the next one is. But this one, if you're listening to it kind of in real time, is in Denver, Colorado. They're having their 21st straight year of doing this conference. And again, a great networking opportunity, a great place to learn a lot about building commissioning. You know, a lot of conferences you can go to and maybe catch a course or two, or maybe if you get lucky, they have a track. But this is just chock full of people who really know everything they could possibly know about commissioning. Even vendors who specifically target commissioning. When you're talking about looking for software that may save you time and money, they're going to be there. Or if you're looking to team up with somebody in a different location, again, this is the place to be. Happens every year. This year, again, in Denver, in May 6th through the 8th. If you're looking for other opportunities, their spring webinar series is, we're in the middle of it. The next one that's coming up is going to be on May 15th, and the title is Controls, Loop Tuning, and Night Setback Really Hard? I think that would be a great topic. I'm looking into registering for it. So if you have any interest in it, you can check out, or if you have interest in joining the BCA, which, again, if you're a commissioning person, I think that would be a highly valuable move. Just go to their website. It's BCA or BCXA.org. That's BCXA.org for all that information and good stuff. Again, they have webinar series that continue to go on. I think there's one in June as well. So look for updates there. I'll post it in the show notes just for you to have some convenient links if you want to go and check out the website at Building X. So let's cut to the tape with Rob Laneve. All right, today we are going to be talking with Rob Laneve, Director of Engineering at Air Control Products. How you doing, Rob?
Pretty well, Matt. Nice to talk with you today.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, I just want to, we're talking today about, careers in HVAC and specifically manufacturer's rep. Now, I know you personally through H3, and I just wanted to kind of get a little bit more about, what's your background and how you got into the industry.
Well, sure. I was studying, obviously, mechanical engineering and went into the co-op program. So I pursued an opportunity with Wickert Engineering a number of years ago as a co-op, and that came about from a kind of a reference from a family member, and sort of really grew to like the built environment, HVAC. So I did some co-op sessions at Wickert, went there full time for a few years, and then decided to make a change. Went outside the industry for a while, but then came back. And it was just intriguing to me to get back into HVAC and as a representative. So I came back kind of full circle, as I say. But I originally started as a co-op, as a mechanical engineer, and then now working as a representative.
Now, do you have your engineer's license? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, no, I do not have my professional engineer's license. I just have my graduate degree and then my EIT.
Okay. Just curious. Now, I guess is that sort of background kind of typical for people in your industry, or what is as being a manufacturer's rep? What's kind of like a pre-qualification that you'd see?
I've seen all sorts of avenues. Some are registered engineers, as you just referenced. Some are graduates from engineering schools without PE licenses. Others are high school graduates. Others are college graduates. It just has to do with, I guess, your level of interest in the industry. And within the industry, you have people that call on contractors and to actually sell products as a salesperson. And then you have people like myself that call on engineers or architects or end users regarding the application of our products. So as long as somebody's knowledgeable in the application, performance, and background, behind a product, they could, do a good job. So it's not necessarily engineering degree required, but it's a great asset to have or help to have.
Now, do you find that you have to come to be a manufacturer's rep with a certain skill set, or is there some on the job training that takes place?
I do feel I was at an advantage having an engineering background as a skill set. Within our built environment, you're talking about the thermal sciences, so understanding thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, that all plays, heat transfer, all plays into what we do on a day-to-day basis. I've seen some people without a technical background maybe struggle a little more, or have to spend a little more time not fully understanding, what they're getting into. But I think a technical background is definitely an asset. But at the same point, if you have a willingness to learn and aptitude for mechanical things, you could learn, a good portion of what you need on a day-to-day basis as a representative. The key is, understanding the problem at hand, either from an engineer's perspective that's coming to you or from a contractor, understanding the right product, how to solve that problem, and then getting it done, so to speak, where, either you're going to take an order and make sure you get it to the contractor when he wants it, or select the product right for the engineer that doesn't create a problem later on.
Now, obviously, knowledge is one thing, but the ability to communicate, obviously, you've talked about, the interaction that takes place, as a manufacturer's representative or a manufacturer's rep, as it's sometimes known as. That's kind of a key skill for getting into the field.
Most definitely. In today's world of emails and even, texts and websites and webinars and all this sort of stuff, you have to have good written communications, but also orally, you have to present something, a topic, a concept, idea, and a product to your audience, whether it be during a lunch and learn or during a short presentation at an office somewhere with just one-on-one. So verbally, you need to be able to communicate your concept and idea, and then in a written form, be able to explain possibly through an email back to somebody of how something's going to operate or a control sequence. So definitely communications of verbal and written are very, very necessary.
Now, as far as being a manufacturer's rep, obviously you're working for some other company. Do you get trained on that? How does usually that come into play as far as getting that knowledge base?
Most definitely, training is offered by the manufacturer. Every manufacturer has their product and their expertise, and there's no way just by picking up a catalog or reading about it that you're going to fully understand what goes into it. So many times when you come on board with the manufacturer, they will have you visit their facility, maybe spend anywhere from 2 to 7 days in training. Some of our bigger product lines require a 6-day training program. Others require, 2 days you can pick it up. But you're going to that manufacturer, you're learning how the product is made, how it's functions, its applications, where it should be applied, basically, and where it shouldn't be applied, its limitations and its capabilities. So definitely training comes from the manufacturer when you bring, as a new manufacturer comes on.
Now, obviously, somebody listening to this, thinking that, hey, you know what, that sounds good. I have good communication skills. I understand, technically. How do they go about getting into the industry? I mean, most of the cases, I don't know necessarily how you specifically found it, but what do people look for?
I guess let me step back to maybe my experience was there was a current employee here at our company, our Control Products, that knew of me and said, hey, our company is looking to strengthen and to boost our engineering focus, and I know you had your engineering degree. Would you be interested in talking to us? So that was just an internal, I guess, reference that I call. And I said, sure, let's go talk, see what it's about. Other than that, if you were focused as an engineer, say, or interested in applying products, you would look for a representative that had products that was of interest for you, whether it be air movement or fluid flow, on pumps or cooling towers or whatever it be the case. And then I would go to find that manufacturer that might be of interest to you. So if you pick one out and then see who their local representative is, and then see how they go about promoting their product, that they may be in need of somebody to enhance or boost their promotion with either contractors or engineers or architects or whatever the product is. So, every manufacturer lists on their website who covers the territory. So you could find somebody like that. But, you and I both know so much happens through networking, word of mouth, and references that at the same point you start asking the right people, somebody will say, hey, ABC company is looking for somebody, and you just kind of fall into it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know a lot of the bigger companies, might advertise and things like that. But a lot of these, representative firms, they're not, extremely large. I mean, I think that yours might be a little bit more of the exception to the rule. But and I guess another thing to consider is that if you are looking for a specific industry, say air movement or products like that, typically there's going to be 3 to 4 competing manufacturers, and each one of those is going to be serviced by a different manufacturer's representative firm.
Yes, that's correct. So. You pick the Google search, you're going to get, those pages are going to come up with different manufacturers. And you're right, each manufacturer has a unique person or a firm in an area that represents them. And you're also correct in the size. We're about 40 some odd people. Some firms are 3 people. We work out of a building here in Broadview Heights. Some people work out of a small office suite, with just 3 or 4 of them. And sometimes we inventory product in a warehouse. Other reps do not inventory product. So there is a wide range of, I guess, business models among the representatives.
Mm-hmm. So now, I guess let's go to the relationship between manufacturers, reps, and the manufacturers themselves. I guess kind of explain to people why it's even necessary that manufacturers, should use a representative network.
That's an interesting question, Matt, because when I first came back on board, I've been here at Air Control about 12 years, and I asked, is the rep industry even valid anymore? Is it a valid business model, or is it kind of being phased out? And it became evident that not at all, and that the representative is very strong today because many manufacturers are reducing their staff and in terms of territory coverage. So if you look at a manufacturer located in, pick a state, Wisconsin, and you say, okay, how are they going to get people into every city across the country? They're either going to have to get a big sales staff and maintain that and manage that, or they're going to go get representatives to handle a territory. And the manufacturers need representatives to manage that territory. So they look to representatives, the signing of a rep firm up, to promote and sell their product in a territory. Now, for us in Ohio, it's usually divided like by zip code or by county. So there's no way that manufacturer could cover all Ohio counties or Northeast Ohio or whatever area you want to pick from a remote location effectively. So we're kind of what you call the feet on the street for that manufacturer in the area. So we're under contract with the manufacturer to be their exclusive representative. And most manufacturers will pursue it that way as far as having an exclusive contract. And we're responsible for the promotion, sales, and application of that product in that territory. And that's what they look to us to do. And obviously they have a certain goals for sales that they say, you got to sell X dollars in this area, and they do want you to achieve that.
Now, I mean, obviously there are different exceptions where manufacturers might be, they might try to have regional sales offices that cover, certain areas, correct?
Correct, yes. Some larger manufacturers will also have a regional group. And this is, I'm kind of give you an large overview perspective, but each area is then managed by like a regional manager. So he might have 3 states or 12 states, or some of the regionals, they cover, like east of the Mississippi and west of the Mississippi, so they can get pretty large territories, and into Canada and Mexico. And, our manufacturers are international also, so they have other territories. But you do still manage sort of on a local level, and then you kind of work your way back up from local to region to maybe, district or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess you kind of mentioned, sales targets. Is that generally how most of these, these contracts, once they find, do they? I mean, I guess do they even interview different rep firms and say, have 2 or 3 compete and say, who can, bring me the biggest sales numbers? Is that how it goes, or is it just kind of, whoever they think is a best fit, they work with them, and here's the sales numbers that we have just for about everybody?
Correct. Like if let's take a manufacturer that wants to go into new territory, and they say, Cleveland, Ohio is, we got to get into Cleveland. So they'll do their homework and through their network and through the internet searches and whatnot, or they'll call fellow manufacturers and say, hey, I want to take my stuff into Cleveland, and who do you guys have up there? And they'll get a list of names, 3 or 4 names, or more, and generally that manufacturer will arrange appointments with those different agencies, say existing manufacturer reps, and said, hey, I'm looking to come into Cleveland, and this is my product, and I think I can sell, $100,000 or $1 million or whatever the number is. How would you guys go about it? So they'll interview you and to see what your capabilities are. And then they'll do the same thing to the next firm and the next firm, and then they'll make a decision about who they feel most comfortable with, who is open to partnering with them, who they think they're going to get the most response from. At the end of the day, they need to sell their product, mm-hmm. and they want to choose a firm that they feel is going to get them the most sales. But at the same point, you have to be easy to do business with. So I think if they're like, boy, I could get $1 million out of them, but that's going to be hard because I just don't see how their system is. But I could get $900,000, and these guys be easy to do business with. They might sacrifice that $100,000 or something to be just for lack of headaches or something, But for the most part, they just want a good partner relationship that can bring them the sales that they're looking for.
Right, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they rely on the manufacturer's reps to be the marketing face of their company. So I can see where they might not necessarily go with the low bidder every time.
Correct. Yep, that's right. Yeah, they you hear a lot about plans and everything and businesses and stuff, but somebody made the point too that at the end of the day, people do business with people, and you have to have handshakes and work well together, and it's about a relationship, or like I say, a partnership.
So, I mean, is the contract generally for a period of time? Is it just reviewed annually? What sort of kind of guarantee do you have as a rep that you can hold on to a line for a specific amount of time?
You mentioned interesting word, or you used the interesting word, guarantee. There is no guarantee. You're subject to cancellation at any point. Unfortunately, it's kind of how the industry works. Again, going back to that partnership type of thing, people are not going to, if you have a good relationship, they're not going to call you up on Tuesday and say, oh, you're canceled. They're going to say, hey, you guys have been falling off a little bit. What can we do to get you back on track? And they're going to work with you. And they want to see you succeed because it's in their interest also. But some contracts are 30 days, and then it's renewed automatically until further notice. But it's not like you're signing contracts every 30 days with everyone. It's just kind of an understood, or there's a clause that says, we'll honor your orders and stuff for 30-day periods, and if at any point we would, cancel you on June 18th, we would honor everything you ordered up through that point and stuff like that. So there's kind of 30-day agreements. Some agreements are a little more loosey-goosey, but for the most part, there's always something that says what you're going to do, what they expect, what you expect of them, that you sign as a mutual agreement between each other.
Right. And I guess it's regardless of how good a salesman you are, if you're a rep or a rep firm, you're going to have multiple rep lines. So to be able to focus on anyone in particular, obviously, today you're my most important manufacturer that I'm representing, and then you turn around and you're like, oh, okay, no, today you're my favorite manufacturer. So there's that consideration where you might not necessarily be servicing them to their full potential or what they expect.
Right, and that's the thing they'll look at also as a manufacturer. They'll say, well, this rep agency has 2 lines or 50 lines. How much time will they be able to devote to me, and how much time do I need them to devote to me? And as long as every day we talk about, getting up and looking across and say, what can I do today for this manufacturer, that manufacturer, that we have an obligation, or as a representative, you have an obligation to each manufacturer. And somehow you got to carve out or niche out a time to support each one and to promote and to remember each one. And if you don't, it'll come to light pretty quickly, and that's when sometimes the manufacturer will make a change and say, we need somebody that's going to be a little more focused, and they'll change and find maybe a better fit. Mm-hmm. But you try to get that up front. You never want to take somebody on as a representative and not support them properly.
Right. Now, and two, typically what you'd end up doing is you'd end up with rep firms that have complementary and not necessarily, you'd rarely, I think, if at all, see, direct competition between the lines that they represent. I think that they want to make sure that they fit all, and they're not going to, have an air handling unit manufacturer is not necessarily going to go with a rep firm that's just does hydronics and things like that. So you'd have
Correct.
This sort of like a complete suite of offerings.
Yes, mm-hmm. Right now we're predominantly focused, so we call on the air side of the business. Other firms focus on the wet side of the business. In other territories where we get together with a sales meeting, we'll have agencies that have both a wet and an air side. And they've been able to manage that, and manufacturers have embraced them to do both, and it has, worked out for them. So it just kind of depends. But you're right in the saying that you don't normally have like 2 major products that are competitors under one agency.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the boundaries go, I know that typically, you're not given the whole United States, or you're not given the whole
right.
whole area. How do they determine those boundaries that you work within?
Generally, we've found that in Ohio here it's divided by county or zip codes. Some people will use area codes, but sometimes years ago area codes have kind of been so divided. You're into these, different territories. So most have gone by counties. So like if you look at Ohio, you might look at, outside of Columbus a little bit, and then like all north of Columbus. And then you have like Toledo and south, and then maybe around Columbus, and then maybe some areas down in Dayton and in Cincinnati. And, it has to be within what I call like reasonable travel distance. It'd be difficult for me, say from Cleveland, to support somebody in Dayton 4 hours away. So the manufacturer says, I don't know, Columbus is right in the middle. Why don't we kind of, maybe we should have a rep in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati or Dayton, and then divide up the territories like that. So generally, if we have an office ourselves down in Columbus, also, and over in Toledo, so with staffed people. So if an agency has multiple offices, then they'll give them the line in multiple territories. But generally, by county is a good division of territories.
All right, excellent. So now, getting back to that office kind of mentality, I guess obviously it all depends on size, but there are different kind of functions that reps will have, and like you mentioned a little bit earlier, there are some people who focus on engineers, people who focus on contractors. Can you really explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. Within a rep agency, you kind of look at the whole process, and building is designed and laid out, say, by an engineer and an architect. Well, they're going to need help, so you need somebody to support them. Then that is going to come out to bid, and you're going to try to build that building, so you're going to need a contractor, and somebody needs to help them and support them. So you have these two kind of what we call outside people responsibilities that need to go outside the office, need to go out and visit contractors, visit engineers, visit architects, visit end users, whatever that entity out there is that needs help outside the four walls that you call your office. And then once you say secure an order from a contractor, you get something specified by an engineer, you got to have something to generate either like the purchase order, the sales, or send the order to the factory and that. So you have to bring that back in-house. So usually you have a staff or people that are going to help process an order, make sure you get the submittal made, submit the shop drawing back through the appropriate channels, things of that nature. So you have this outside group, and you have this inside group we call inside support. You also have people that call in and say, hey, I get this question about this particular product. So the inside support needs to field those phone calls. And then obviously you have an accounting department to process all your paperwork and orders. And again, some of that grows as you grow. If you're a rep agency of one, you're going to do all that. You're going to go outside, you're going to come inside, and you're going to send the bills out and collect the money.
Yeah.
Well, as you get bigger, you can't continue to do all that, so maybe you get an assistant and then another, and then you continue to grow from there. So you have outside sales, inside sales and support, and then any kind of administrative support.
Okay. Now, I guess when we talk about, success as a manufacturer's rep, what are some tools that you think that, every rep should have?
Like tools for success, I guess we could call those. One, I think you have to be understanding in the fact that somebody's bringing a problem to you that they need fixed, and I say problem, it's not like, and maybe a puzzle is a better word. It's not necessarily, I got this problem. They just need help or assistance. So you have to have a willingness to understand, and then you have to have the, obviously the cognitive ability or, to be able to get the work done and to know which product applies. And then everything moves so fast today that you got to be able to get it done when they need it. And if a person calls you, most likely they need something back within, sometimes hours, minutes, and maybe a day or two. But nobody's going to say, get that to me next week. It's like people are just pressed more and more to do things faster and quicker, that you got to have a kind of a sense of urgency to get it done. And then, you got to have good personable skills, or, you're talking to people on the phone, you're giving handshakes to people. They want to see a smiling face. They don't, you got to have good disposition. Nobody wants to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Grumpy,
Yeah.
You got to, You got to do that. So I think understanding, appreciation for the task at hand, sense of urgency to get it done, and then just a good attitude, good disposition.
Excellent. Now, I mean, as far as, obviously engineers and contractors are the kind of the two groups that, generally speaking, that you're going to be dealing with. Let's focus on engineers first. What are some of the specific needs that you find engineers? I mean, obviously you talked about problem solving and being able to. They have a situation, a design constraint that they want a solution to. Is that what other things do they need?
You're right in the fact that it kind of varies. Sometimes, an engineer has already done his heating, cooling load calculation. He needs 12,000 BTUs of cooling, okay, and he needs to do that with a chilled water coil. Okay, so you're going to pick a coil, and that's kind of done and over with. So he already knows, or she already has come to you with, this is what I need, give me the product that does it. And that's one thing that's usually pretty straightforward and not a big deal. Other times they might say, well, I have this building, and I know I got to heat and cool it, but I'm not sure exactly how to go about it. What are some ideas? What's some new technologies? Rob, what do you think we could do with this type of building? Now, that's when you get to put on your thinking cap, as they say, and say, okay, look, maybe it's a hydronic system, maybe it's an air system, maybe it involves energy recovery, maybe we have some other system, escapes me right now. But in that aspect, they either come to you with, this is what I need, and you pick the product, or the kind of the drawing is open, and we have to decide on how to go about it. Mm-hmm. The other times, maybe they have a specific problem at hand, that maybe it's an odor problem or an airflow problem, and they're like, I just don't know what's going on here. What do you think could be the problem? So now it's into troubleshooting, where you're like, okay, do we want to check fan rotation? Do we want to check pressurization of the building? How do we, we kind of troubleshoot of finding that kind of what I call the red X, what's creating that issue. So I would say we either have a defined criteria, pick me something that fits this. Hey, what can you help me with here? I'm not sure where to go, to, hey, look, we got a problem with something that's already out there. What do we do with it?
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. It's not always just, hey, I need something to put in my new design. It may be, hey, you know what, I've used your product and there's something not quite right, and it may not necessarily be your product, but can you help me figure out exactly what it was, or if there was something that wasn't installed properly about it, and things like that.
Correctly, yeah, exactly. Many times it's just that, and they're like, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that, or that type of thing. Where we've had installations where they maybe forgot a piece or part or component, and be like, oh, shoot, okay, I see what we got to do now. And then they fix it. And then next time moving forward, we know that we need to specify it more clearly or install it in a better fashion, or whatever would be the case.
Now, as far as kind of, I'll throw two generalities out there for you, and this is maybe focused on younger engineers. Relying on manufacturers' reps too much, mm-hmm. is there some danger there that you think that, obviously there's some personal responsibility that engineers have to have, but do you see some engineers just kind of not necessarily questioning or getting in the right conversation, maybe more appropriate with you in regards to certain things?
Correct. I would agree with you. There's sometimes I think a young engineer has been tasked with a job, or and says, okay, we need to get this done. And if they're not quite sure, they'll send it off to a representative and say, hey, I need this, this, and that. And we send it back to them, and I guess I take a conscious effort in making sure that I'm providing them with what's correct. But sometimes I feel that they're not always understanding what I'm sending to them, or maybe why the choice I made. Where as that engineer grows and you get to maybe somebody a little more experienced, they'll come back and say, hey, I need this, but I want you to watch a noise level, a weight, a position, a condition of something, where they're a little more seasoned and they know what they don't want to happen, so to speak. They want a certain fan RPM or they want a certain arrangement. Where I think a young engineer, if they're not experienced, I could send them a fan mounted on the roof, or I could send them a fan that's mounted in line, and they'd be like, oh, okay, great. But really, only one of them is going to work for the application that they have. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I feel I have to ask the right questions to say, oh, where's this fan going to be mounted at? Because I'll get a vague inquiry, hey, I need a 4,000 CFM fan. Okay, we got lots of choices. I have about 27, which one would you like? So I think a young engineer needs to understand his application and what he's looking for. And I had an older engineer tell me once that he felt some of the staff was relying too heavily on the representative for everything and not really understanding what was coming back to them. Mm-hmm. And he was stressing to his staff, I want you to, embrace a representative because he's your ally and resource, but at the same point, know what you're getting back, or have an idea what should be coming back, that this fan should be about 2 horsepower and it should be about this, and having a general idea.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the opposite side, you're dealing with contractors. Mm-hmm. What sort of specific needs are the contractors looking at for manufacturers' reps?
Okay, a contractor, is going to go to multiple reps or 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever to get a price on a project. So the new school comes out and he says to 3 or 4 of his reps, he says, okay, I need a price on all those air distribution, all those pumps, all those fans, whatever it be. And so he needs to have a good, because he's in competition with other contractors, right? So mm-hmm. we may be bidding our products to multiple contractors. So the contractor needs to know that, 1, you have a good firm price. 2, that you have your good quantities and counts, that there are 12 fans and you didn't quote them 6 or 24. And he needs to know that you can deliver on what you say, and the fact that he needs these products 8 weeks from now or 12 weeks from now or 1 week from now. Can I give this order to that salesperson that, 1, he's picked them correctly, the equipment, it's going to perform the way the engineer wants it, and 2, it's going to be here when I need it, or when the crane is sitting outside the building, or when my guys are there to install it. Is it going to be here, or is it going to be a delivery? So issue. So the contractor wants a good firm price to know your pricing is good, and he wants good delivery, and he wants your knowledge too, and the fact that, does this person know what they're doing? Do they know that they picked the right fan and that they took it off the drawing correctly? They can't afford mistakes, or if the right voltage was ordered. If you get a whole series of equipment and they're all the wrong voltage or something, you'd be like, well, now what do I do? So now this delays the process. So the contractor, he wants good pricing, good counts, and good delivery, and then good support. He doesn't want a piece of paper with a number on it. He wants to know who he's dealing with. So he wants to see you, and he wants you to be there to see him.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, the submittal is an interesting interaction between, the engineer, the contractor, and the manufacturer's rep. In essence, the engineer, if you're the basis design, there really shouldn't be too much difference between what submitted by the contractor to the engineer. All those numbers should pretty much match up.
Sure.
Even though that it may be one sales engineer, selling it, or kind of representing it to the engineer, and another different salesman representing it to the contractor. Correct?
Correct, right. The one thing that, in this, again, in electronic files and stuff, when we make a selection for an engineer, we're able to share that file with the salesman who's actually bidding that product to the contractor. So, if we made it with a corrosion-resistant coating, a 5-horsepower motor mounted on the roof, all that information is going to be in the file that goes to the salesman that says, Mr. Contractor, here's the product as it was provided to the engineer, specified in the drawing, and is consistent with everything you see there. When you're not basis of design, then you're under obligation to match what was on those drawings. So now it is a little more reliance upon that salesperson to say, okay, did he match this up properly? And then the engineer, he specifies a manufacturer A, but he gets a submittal from manufacturer B. Now he's got a little more work to try to compare the two to make sure everything is consistent. Mm-hmm. But we do try to share any work that I do, say up front with an engineer, with the sales staff. And that's where, your, again, interpersonal skills, not only outside the office, but within the office, need to be refined and say adequate, or just evident that, hey, you can communicate to a coworker, this is what we ordered, or this is what we specified, this is what you need to order, and this is what the engineer wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I guess from my experience, some things that I've seen occur would be, the fact that it might be, you might get a number of fan selections, you put it into your, selection program, being not necessarily the basis of design, but somebody is going to be an or equal. And you might say, hey, you know what, you ordered a 2 horsepower, but we can get a 1.5 horsepower fan with a little bit different configuration. It's going to save some money, at least for the contractor, and they might try to get that approved by the engineer. Right.
And that's I guess on what we call bid day, when you're issuing a price to do something, that's a risk or a liability that someone's maybe weighing. They say, okay, I wonder if I could get by with this, and I wonder if the engineer is going to approve it. And in my mind, that's kind of a risk that maybe shouldn't be taken, in the fact that the engineer knows what he wants, and he or she, and that if there's a cost savings, that obviously we want to build better buildings and conserve energy, then present that as maybe as an alternate, or say, here's another way, but here's what you asked for, but here is what is another option. Maybe you weren't base of design, the engineer wasn't aware of some new technology or different way of doing it. Mm-hmm. But out of respect for the drawings, for the engineer that went into that, I do feel you always should quote and provide what was specified. And not to say that's going to be at the end of the day, but say, hey, we're going to do this, but I'd like to also come talk to you about a viable option, and try to get that worked out too. But I do like to see compliance with the documents as they exist to start out with.
Right. So now, I guess, any you've given a couple examples of situations, but any other examples that you've of problems, solutions that you've found out in the field?
Sometimes the simplest things you think, well, how in the world can that go wrong? And it does, whether it be like a simple electric duct heater. Well, there are airflow sensors on those. You can't always just turn those upside down because there's a little air diaphragm in there that could malfunction. There are times when somebody's, we're about short of airflow, maybe 30%. Well, sometimes when you run a fan backwards, you only get about 70%. So somebody calls and tells me, yeah, you're about 30% short. I'd say you check the rotation of the fan. Oh, and, with sometimes you can reverse electrical leads and the fan will spin backwards. Or if there's a certain pressure condition, the wheel of a fan starts moving backwards and then the motor starts, it could continue to move backwards. So you think, well, how can that go wrong? And it does. Sometimes, so let's see, fan wheels. Let's see what else has been out there that could go wrong like that. Sometimes inlet conditions, outlet conditions, people, we'll just jam it in there. Well, understand that the performance data that is developed by AMCA and certified by, for a manufacturer is kind of under ideal conditions and with certain inlet and outlet straight duct lengths. And if you try to jam it all together, you got to kind of realize that you're going to have a reduction in performance, and it's just not magically going to correct itself. Sometimes static pressures through a duct system are either underestimated or overestimated. And when you pick a fan, you ought to be able to pick a fan to give you a little bit of allowance, because there are going to be kind of what we call means and methods of construction that change things in the field versus really what's exactly on the drawings. So, don't pick a fan right at the edge of its performance, either at the top or bottom. Try to get one in the middle third of the area, and keep that in mind. Let's see what else has been. We've had some other technologies that rely upon the construction of the plenum, whether it be in a raised floor or above the floor, that the means of construction on the general contractor side can impact the HVAC arena heavily. If you have a bunch of leaks around the building, or you have air infiltrating through open cracks and stuff, and you're like, well, I can't get the heat out of this unit that I wanted. Well, it's not so much the unit that's not producing the heat. It's the fact that you have 20% or 30% more heating load because you got this crack in the wall that is no function of, maybe the building shifted or moved, or somebody forgot a block, or it could be anything. But it's not always equipment per se. At times it's, a combination of things.
Right. It's probably the method of, or the construction, or some other factors that come into play.
Mm-hmm. Somebody forgets something in a duct and gets hung up on a damper, or you got excess pressure drop because there's a piece of plastic that's caught on a damper downstream. It gets sucked in somewhere. People have just weird things have happened.
Right. Yeah, and I know that a lot of times, you as a manufacturer's rep actually, become, kind of, the bad guy. Yeah, in the situation where you're like, hey, your piece of equipment isn't performing well, and it's up to you to kind of solve that and say, hey, well, no, it's not my equipment. That's fine, but here's some problem with the way the piping's laid out. It's short cycling, or just different things like that you might get involved in.
Right. We've had some, like on a VAV box where it was noisy. Well, part of that was because the system pressure got too high. You don't need that high pressure that you had there. You need to ramp that fan back down, or air spilling out of a fan-powered box. It's like, you got way too much air going in there, so it's just that troubleshooting that I mentioned earlier comes into play, where you're just trying to help people fix the problem.
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess you're if you're a manufacturer's rep, looking at as a career, what are some of the opportunities for advancement? Are there paths to ownership? What different different opportunities do you have?
It kind of depends on where you start out at within the organization, and then how big the organization is. If you were, let's just say you started out in a organization 6, 8, 10 people or something like that. There's different sizes of engineers, different sizes of the contractor. So you might be given a small account per se to start with to get your feet wet. But over time, as you want to advance and you get really good at getting everything, and giving good quotes and counts and servicing and doing everything you need to, you might be given the opportunity to give a bigger account, and ultimately, get somebody who's a real major player, and they're doing big projects in town, and you're like, this is cool. You're not doing the little 1 or 2 office fit out or remodel somewhere. You're doing a 12-story building, and that's fun. So you could advance in terms of scope of work and responsibilities. You could advance in terms of ownership, depending on the firm going into it, who owns the firm, and what their transition or succession plan is, and the fact that sometimes people will partner, and you'll get 2 or 3 partners that as a rep firm. And then over time, one of them will want to leave, so then somebody could take their place, and then you get to maybe make a little more decisions about what manufacturers you're going to take on and in what territories, or if you're going to have a second office in another city or that type of thing. So there's advancement in terms of accounts where you get more responsibility, kind of doing your same role, but maybe just bigger bigger. And then there's maybe the management side of advancing into ownership, if that be the case. Some people have chosen to learn the rep business under a certain group of manufacturers, and then chosen to leave and go on their own to maybe a different group of manufacturers. And so they start a whole business themselves. So maybe they were, representing fans, and now they say, no, I want to get to representing pumps. So now they'll go start a pump company. And many firms, I think if you look around Cleveland, people grew out of one firm or another. You could kind of trace it back, and they branched out, and as the need arose. So you could go into being your own business owner out of just starting out one day as an entry-level salesperson or engineer calling on engineers.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at the, I guess you could almost the genealogy of some of the firms that, whether it be rep firms or engineers or contractors that all sort of, intermingle in a particular region.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And it's within our industry. It is really pretty small. I mean, we all kind of know each other, one way or the other, and be like, "Hey, wait a minute, you were over there." Yeah, I jumped over here, and people switch around in the engineering community, in the rep industry, in the contractor industry. So there's opportunities for it. For those that want to, kind of, they say, be aggressive and forward thinking and focused. There's opportunities for growth, definitely.
So what are some of the things that you enjoy about being a rep?
I enjoy the variety. I really do. I look at the variety of our products, and I look at the variety of challenges that are presented to me from the engineers or contractors or end users. It really is, every day is a little different. You kind of never know when that phone rings what's going to be on the other end, either a new job or an existing job or something else. I've had the opportunity to travel to some places that I wouldn't have otherwise, just because of our representing so many different manufacturers. And you'd think, well, I would never have gone there if I hadn't represented them or whatever. And you meet great people. I think an opportunity to develop some good relationships, great relationships with some good people is always a good thing. We're strongly supported our industry from our ASHRAE group, and I'm, as you know, heavily involved with the ASHRAE, as you are. You've done a lot for the National Society also. But, that gives you another avenue to meet people and to exchange ideas and stuff. So you have this kind of your core business area, and then you have this other industry group that you're meeting locally here once a month. You see your friends and have dinner with them, and then on a bigger scope, on a ASHRAE Society level, a couple times a year, you're getting together with a committee or a group. So I like the variety and the friendships.
So if you had anything to tell the engineers, the contractors out there about reps, what is there any advice that you'd give them to kind of, I don't know, either be kind of make the relationship better, I guess?
Let's see. There was a few years back I coined a phrase, and I presented to the engineers when I talked to them. But it's called the 4-for-1. And if you look at the construction process, ultimately you have this owner that wants a building. And what you have is a design team, a contractor, a representative, and a manufacturer. Those four entities all need to be working together as a team, ultimately for that owner to build the building that they want. And if I told an engineer, a contractor, anything, is remember that a representative is part of that team in the fact that we all need to work together in what is desired. And we're here to help the cause, and we're not, we're not on our own or just giving you a number. It's okay, here it is. It's $1,000. Good luck. We're here to support you and to help you and to work together and to partner and to provide you a solution that is beneficial to the team or to the whole process. And use us as an ally and work together and together I think we can do better things, build better buildings.
Excellent. Any other final thoughts that you'd have?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Matt, to talk with you and to maybe offer some insight. Obviously, everyone's got their own take on it, and nothing I said today is gospel or kind of the end all or the only way. But overall, the industry does allow you to meet great people, help solve problems, and it's fun.
Excellent. Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure as always, and thanks for being on.
You're welcome, Matt. Thank you, and wish you best of luck. If I can ever do anything for you, let me know.
All right. Thanks again to Rob Laneve for taking the time out and talking with us about being a manufacturer's representative. A lot of good information there. I hope you get something out of it. If you did, go ahead and share it with somebody. I really appreciate you listening. You are the elite in the category of HVAC, always looking for opportunities to learn and educate yourself, and that's exactly what we need in the field. So I want to thank you, encourage you to keep it up and keep it going. So if you did like it, why don't you pass it on? You can do that for me. I'd really appreciate it. And hey, again, with our sponsor, the Building Commissioning Association, I really appreciate the sponsorship. That makes putting on this website or this podcast a lot easier. I do it out of pocket, and it's really great to have support from an association like the Building Commissioning Association. So, if nothing else, I would really appreciate you giving them a thank you for supporting the show. And you can that's my one request for this episode. If you could you just thank them. And you can do it through the show if you want. I can pass on the information. If you want have any suggestions, comments, you can always get a hold of me at matt@buildingx.co, or kind of follow me on Twitter at buildingx or on LinkedIn. So Matt Nelson, PE. Well, that's pretty much all. Wrapping it up for this week. I appreciate you. And as always, remember, know what you build and share what you know.